What if the car of the future doesn't run on batteries, doesn't need a charging cable, and doesn't burn a single drop of fuel? What if it runs on something you can pour from a bottle you bought at a convenience store? Water. That's not a metaphor. That's not a marketing slogan. Toyota is actually building an engine that splits water into hydrogen on the spot, burns that hydrogen to move the car, and releases nothing but water vapor out the back. No emissions, no battery pack, no plug. And if it works, really works, it doesn't just challenge Tesla. It rewrites the entire story of where transportation is headed. But before you get excited, you need to hear what happened to every single person who made this exact same claim before Toyota. Did because there's a graveyard full of them? Let's go back to 2008. A Japanese company called Genesis Facts called a press conference and told the world they had done it. A car that runs on water. No gasoline, no diesel, just H2O. Headlines everywhere. Clean fuel, free energy. The end of oil. Then scientists took a closer look. The car wasn't running on water alone. It needed a chemical called metal hydride to function. Without it, nothing happened. Genesis Facts had dressed up a partial reaction and sold it as a revolution. No hard evidence was ever produced. The company faded. The dream evaporated. That wasn't even the first time. Back in the 1980s, an American inventor named Stanley Meyer swore he'd built a dune buggy that ran purely on water. He toured it around, gave interviews, collected investors. People believed him. And then, in 1996, a court found him guilty of fraud. The dune buggy never worked the way he claimed. In 2002, a company called Hydrogen Technology Applications pitched a device called the Aquagen, supposedly able to split water and power vehicles. Scientists investigated. The conclusion? It made cars slightly more fuel efficient, not water-powered, not even close. That same year, a group called Genesis World Energy convinced investors to pour real money into a water-powered device. No car ever appeared. By 2006, their founder, Patrick Kelly, was in prison, and it kept happening. A singer from Sri Lanka claimed he drove 190 miles on 3 liters of water. He was arrested for fraud. An Indonesian man said his device could power a motorcycle for 500 kilometers on a single liter of water, and that Lamborghini and Ferrari were calling him. Scientists in his own country called it a violation of the laws of physics. The car companies never called. Every single person who stood up and said a car could run on water was either lying, mistaken, or both. So here's the question you should be sitting with right now. Why is Toyota different? That question matters more than anything else in this story. And the answer isn't simple. But this is where things start to get genuinely uncomfortable. Because the line between a bold scientific breakthrough and a very expensive illusion has been crossed before by people who seemed credible. The physics hasn't changed. Water is one of the most stable molecules in nature. Splitting it into hydrogen and oxygen takes energy. You cannot pull free power out of water. That's not an opinion. That's thermodynamics. Every scientist who examined those earlier claims pointed to the same wall. And yet, Toyota, a company with a 100-year track record, 5,000 hydrogen patents, and real cars on real roads, is pushing forward anyway. So either they found something others missed, or they're reframing the conversation in a way that changes what the question even means. Here's what Toyota is actually saying, because it's not quite what the headlines suggest. They're not claiming water is fuel. Not exactly. What they're describing is a system where water is fed into an onboard device called an electrolyzer. That electrolyzer uses electricity power the car already has to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is then fed into the engine and burned. The combustion creates motion. The byproduct is water vapor. The electrolyzer is the key. It's a gadget that Toyota has been quietly perfecting for years. Modern versions hit over 80% efficiency, a significant jump from older systems that lost nearly a third of their energy as heat. Better catalysts, better materials, smarter design. The kind of incremental engineering that doesn't make headlines but makes technologies actually work. The hydrogen doesn't need a separate storage tank. It's generated on demand right when the engine needs it. That removes one of hydrogen's biggest problems, storing a highly pressurized, potentially flammable gas in a vehicle. You're storing water instead. Stable, cheap, easy. The engine itself needs modification. fuel injectors adjusted for hydrogen, the block and cylinder head reinforced to handle the pressure of hydrogen combustion, upgraded valves, upgraded spark plugs. It's not a concept sketch. These are engineering decisions that require real components and real testing. And Toyota has been testing quietly. For a long time, the Mirai has been on public roads since 2014. That's not a prototype behind glass at a trade show. That's a car you could buy, insure, and drive to work. It runs on hydrogen fuel cells, a slightly different system to what Toyota is now developing, but built on the same foundational technology. The same patents, the same team, the Mirai, can travel over 300 miles on a single tank of hydrogen. Refueling takes 5 minutes. Not 5 hours, 5 minutes. For anyone who has sat waiting for a battery to charge on a long drive, that number lands differently. Toyota has over 5,000 patents covering hydrogen production, storage, fuel cell design, and related systems. That is not the portfolio of a company chasing headlines. That is decades of quiet, expensive, methodical research. And in July 2024, they opened a new dedicated hydrogen factory development, production, and sales under one roof, designed specifically to accelerate the timeline from lab to road. This is not Stanley Meyer's dune buggy. But here's where the story gets layered in a way that most coverage skips over entirely. Toyota isn't doing this because they fell in love with water. They're doing this because they're losing. The electric vehicle market has changed faster than almost anyone predicted. China didn't just enter the EV race, they took it over. BYD, NIO, Xpeng, these companies are producing millions of electric cars every year, backed by government subsidies, a massive charging network, and a manufacturing machine that is getting more efficient every quarter. China is the largest electric vehicle market in the world, and the gap is widening. In the United States, Tesla turned EVs from a niche product into a cultural moment. Elon Musk built not just a car company, but a belief system around battery electric vehicles, supercharger networks, over-the-air software updates, range that keeps improving. The story Tesla told was so compelling that every legacy automaker eventually had to respond. Toyota was slower than almost anyone expected from a company that had pioneered hybrid technology with the Prius decades earlier. While others were announcing all-electric lineups and shutting down internal combustion development, Toyota was hedging, saying the transition would take longer. Defending hybrids, investing in hydrogen, some called it a strategic mistake. Others called it arrogance. Now, Toyota is calling it vision. And maybe that reframe deserves a harder look than it usually gets, because battery electric vehicles are not without their own contradictions. The lithium-ion batteries that power them require mining lithium, cobalt, nickel, in processes that are environmentally destructive and often tied to serious humanitarian concerns. The batteries degrade over time. Disposing of them is a problem the industry hasn't fully solved. And the electricity that charges them isn't always clean. In regions where the grid runs on coal, an electric car isn't zero emission, it's just moving the emission somewhere else. Hydrogen doesn't carry those problems. If the hydrogen is produced using renewable energy, solar, wind, hydroelectric, the entire chain from production to road is genuinely clean. Toyota is already pursuing this. In Thailand, they're working on a process that converts chicken manure and food waste into biogas, which is then used to generate hydrogen. That is not a press release concept. That is a running pilot program. Hydrogen refuels in minutes instead of hours. It carries more energy per kilogram than lithium-ion batteries, which translates to longer range with less weight. And a water-based onboard generation system sidesteps the entire hydrogen storage problem. No hypersure tanks. No specialized fueling infrastructure needed on paper. It solves almost every practical complaint about both EVs and traditional hydrogen vehicles simultaneously, which raises a different kind of question. If this technology is real, if it works at the scale Toyota is projecting, why hasn't it happened already? The physics objection is the obvious answer. You can't get more energy out of splitting water than you put in. The system has to be powered somehow. Toyota's answer is that the car's existing electrical systems, potentially supplemented by regenerative braking and renewable energy sources, provide that input. The net energy equation needs to work. That's the part that hasn't been proven in mass production conditions yet, and there's something else worth sitting with. The video raises a shadow that's hard to dismiss entirely.